Sajal, Pradhan.
Yes, sir, we can start.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now you're all aware of the citizenship as well as the rights and duties, fundamental rights and duties. Now, how can you achieve the fundamental rights? For this purpose, so the Constitution of India has also provided directive principles of the state policy. So this is also very important. So the directive principles of the state policy has been taken from Irish Constitution. Okay. So as I have told that we have taken so many good things from the different countries, and then we have designed our constitution. So it has been taken from US, UK, Canada, Japan. So likewise, the USSR. So the directive principles, this has been taken from the Irish Constitution. And the concept behind this directive principles is to create welfare state. Because the people are having fundamental rights and duties. So this is all for the welfare of the public, welfare of the people of India. So the motive behind the inclusion of directive principle is not establishing a political democracy, rather than it is about establishing social and economic democracy in the state. That's why the directive principles lays down some principles or instructions or guidelines for the government while formulating laws, policies of the country and in executing them. So yesterday, any of you, if you have heard the speech by Rahul Gandhi in the parliament, so he also discussed the same thing. Okay. And when the budget was placed by our finance minister, he was speaking on budget as well as he was also speaking about the delivery of lecture by the president. So here Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, so he also said that the directive principles are novel features of the Constitution. This acts as a guideline for the state and should be taken into consideration while coming up with some new policy or any new law. So always, whenever you are bringing any new policy or the new law, then you must consider the directive principles of the state policy. So no one can compel the state to consider and follow all that which is mentioned in the directive principles, as directive principles are not justiciable. So here it also says that the Constitution lays down certain directive principles of state policy, which, though not justiciable, are fundamental in governance of the country. And it is the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. So we are federal state, we are federal country, and the states are independent to create a policy or any law. But they have to consider the directive principles of the constitutions. So this lay down that the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall form in all institutions of national life. So the state shall direct its policy in such a manner as to secure the rights of all men and women, means all citizens, to an adequate means of livelihood, equal pay for equal work, and within limits of its economic capacity and development. So it should make effective provision for securing the right to work, education, and to public assistance in the event of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, or the other cases of undeserved want. So the state shall make all endeavors to secure to workers a living wage, human conditions of work, a decent standard of life, and full involvement of workers in management of industries. Do you see how does this directive principles is very important for the society, for its social and economical as well as political development. So in the economic sphere, the state is to direct its policy in such a manner as to secure distribution of ownership and control of material resources of community to subserve the common good and to ensure operation of economic system does not result in concentration of wealth and means of production to common detriment. Again, this was also discussed by Rahul Gandhi yesterday, in the parliament. So anybody, have you heard his lecture? Huh? When the discussions were going on in the parliament, any student? Any student, if you have heard the lecture of Rahul Gandhi. So he was blaming that the Modi government, BJP government is working for the development of two people, Ambani and Adani, not for the common people. And he also said that the 100 top 100 people are having more wealth than the 55 crores of people. One side, when you compare the wealth of the 55 crores of the people in India, only 100 people are having more wealth than these people. Okay. So this is that's why Rahul Gandhi mentioned the directive policy of the constitution in the parliament yesterday. Okay. Ashish Kumar Sharma. Hello. Hello Ashish. Shashwat Rao. Hello, Saswat. Ashish replied to the conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So have you heard yesterday? Rahul Gandhi's lecture in Parliament.
Yes, sir. I listened to it, sir.
Yeah. Okay, good. So he was discussing about the directive principles. है ना?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So some of the other important directives relates to the provisions of opportunities and facilities for children to develop in healthy manner, free and compulsory education for all the children up to the age of 14, and promotion of education and economic interest of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other weaker sections. So that's why panchayats have been established. So the organization of village panchayat and separation of judiciary from the executive, promulgation of uniform civil code for the whole country, protection of national monuments, promotion of justice on the basis of the equal opportunity, provision for free legal aid. So you might be knowing that in every district there are free legal aid agencies. So who help the people who don't have sufficient money for the wealth for the legal actions. So the active principle says there must be provision for legal aid and protection and improvement of environment and safeguarding of forest and wildlife of the country. Promotion of international peace and security. Just and honorable relations between nations and respect for international law, treaty obligations, and settlement of international disputes by arbitration. So you might have heard several times India and Pakistan raised their issues in the UN Council for the arbitration of the issue related to the Kashmir. So
Yes,
this is the directive principles. So just I'm reading out some of the provisions under Indian Constitution regarding the list of directive principles. So these have been mentioned in the different articles. So article 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, like there are 51 provisions in the different articles. So just see, Article 36 defines state as same as Article 12, means application of principles contained in this part. It authorizes state to secure social order, welfare of the people, certain principles of policies to be followed by the state, equal justice, free legal aid. I have already discussed all the things. Okay. Now we'll see the directive principles under the preamble. What is the similarity? So the preamble of the Constitution is called the key to the mind of the drafters of the Constitution. So it lays down objectives that our Constitution seeks to achieve. Many scholars believe that directive principles is the kernel of the Constitution. So the objectives, directive principles of state policy lays down the guidelines for the state and are reflection of overall objectives laid down in the preamble. So this expresses social justice, economic and political is sought to be achieved through directive principles. So these are incorporated to attain the ultimate ideals of the preamble. Means justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. And directive principles also embodies the idea of the welfare state. So basic thing is directive principles are for the justice, social, economical, and political, as well as for the welfare of the state of people of the state. So when it has been, the provision has been made, so how can it can be enforced? So enforceability of directive principles, here many times the question arises whether an individual can sue the state government or the central government for not following the directive principles. So here it says that no person can sue the state government. So the reason for the same lies in Article 37. It says the provisions contained in this part shall not be enforceable by court, but the principles therein laid down are nevertheless fundamental in governance. So basically difference is one is fundamental, and fundamental things cannot be sued in the courts. So therefore, by virtue of this article, no provision of this part can be made enforceable in the court of law. So it also says that the non-justiciability of the directive principles make the state government or the central government immune from any action against them for not following the directives. So then the second question is there, that whether the Supreme Court or High Court can issue the writ of mandamus if the state does not follow the directive principles. So here it says the literal meaning of the mandamus is to command. So it is a writ which is issued to any person or authority who has been prescribed a duty by the law. So this writ compels the authority to do its duty. So here we discussed there are two different things. One is fundamental right, and second is the directive principles. So it seems to be the same. One side it is the state responsibility, another side the rights of the public. So what is the relationship? So when we talk about the relationship between fundamental rights and the directive principles, then a major concern regarding the validity of directive principles is their compatibility with the fundamental rights, which is contained in the Part 3 of the Constitution, enforceable in the High Courts and the Supreme Court through the manner of writs. So here there are 2 points of difference between these two. Okay. So the fundamental rights are a limitation on the power of the government operating on an individual, whereas the directive principles instruction to the government for the achieving certain ends through their actions means the welfare state. So fundamental rights for the individuals. Directive principles are for the directions, for the guidelines for the state. And second, anything contained in directive principles of state policy cannot be violated either by the individuals or the state. So here, as long as there is no law made to direct made to that effect, while there are strict remedies against the violation of an individual's fundamental right. है ना? So, fundamental rights are very important. So, a law against the active principles cannot be declared as void by the court, but this is not the case with the fundamental rights. So, I think you might have understood the fundamental rights. It is the responsibility of the state, and fundamental rights are the rights of the individuals, and the active principles are the responsibility of the guidelines and the responsibility of the state to achieve the welfare state. So how the active principles are implemented? Okay. So here it's laid down in the Constitution's Part 4 are not directly visible, yet there are large and excessive of laws and government policies which affect the application of the principle of Part 4. It is in the judicial history of India, many laws and legal provisions were created. Why? Judiciary. So, in such case, the active principles played a very vital role, and the courts considered the active principles very cautiously. So, the policies like Mahatma Gandhi Rural Development Employment Guarantee Program, Manrega. So, why Manrega? Just to provide opportunity of livelihood, employment, etc. So Mahatma Gandhi Narega gets the authority which talks about the right to adequate means of livelihood. It is a policy, government policy to provide livelihood to all the citizens who are deprived of. Okay, so the law such as child labor, Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, bolster and canon of Article 39, which deals with the protection of children. So there are so many provisions to protect the child labor, and not only for the people, but there are different laws about the prohibition of slaughter of cows and bullocks. Get their sanctity from Article 48. So this Article 48 deals with the organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. Laws such as Workmen Compensation Act, Minimum Wages Act, Industrial Employment Act, Factories Act, Indian Factories Act 1948, and Maternity Benefit Act depict the implementation of Article 41, 42, 43A likewise. So what are these 41, 42, 43? Under this active principles means Article 41 says right to work, to education, to public assistance in certain cases. Now, Article 42, it discusses about the provisions for just and human conditions of work and maternity leaves. So that's why Indian Factory Act have been created and implemented. And then Article 43, 43A, it says living wage for workers and participation of workers in management of industries. So these are the different provisions under Indian Constitution, and these are the directives for the people. Now, importance of directive principles for an Indian citizen. Naturally, this is very important. So what is the importance? So 64 plus 9, how many people are there? Very few, 70 students present only. So just let me take your attendance first, and again, after some time, I will take one more attendance, downloading. So the importance. So the importance wise, regardless of non-justifiable nature of directive principles, a citizen should be aware of them. Okay. So one of the article 37 describes these principles as fundamental in the governance of the country. Because the objective of the directive principles is to better the social and economic conditions of the society so people can live a good life. Okay, so the directive principle ensures the good life of the Indian citizen. So the knowledge of directive principles helps a citizen to keep a check on the government. So, okay, so now you can understand what is the importance of directive principles. Okay, and then a citizen can use directive principles of state policy as a measure of performance of the government and can identify the scope where it lacks. Okay. So a person should know these provisions because ultimately these principles act as a yardstick to judge the law that governs them. Okay. So, you know why this directive principles is important. So this is very important for the welfare of the public. Right? So the directive principles also contains the power of the state to make a important law. So though through various judicial pronouncements, it is settled principle now that the balancing directive principles and the fundamental rights is as important as managing the sanctity of fundamental rights. None following a directive principles should directly or indirectly affect the fundamental right, which is considered as one of the most essential part of the Constitution. So now I introduce you the Constitution. Now you are also aware of the Constitution as well as the history of how it was established. Then we also discuss the citizenship. What does citizenship means? Just because all the citizens, being a citizen of India, they get fundamental rights, they enjoy fundamental rights. But while you are enjoying the fundamental rights, you also be aware of the fundamental duties. है ना? So if you are enjoying fundamental right, you must follow the important fundamental duties. So this is vice versa, not from only one side. है ना? And then after fundamental right, another important to create a welfare state, the Constitution has made provisions of directive principles of the state policy. So that's why it is mandatory for all the students to know the directive principles, because these directive principles helps in creating a welfare state, and as well as this ensures fundamental right to work, to education, and to public assistance in certain cases. And also, these are the directive principles which make provisions for just and human conditions of work and maternity leaves, living wage, participation of workers. So these are all very important. So these all things have been discussed in details under these directive principles. Okay. So once we have understood the directive principles, so the next chapter is the union and state executive. So 10 minutes are remaining. We can, it is very simple and short topic, the union executive and state executive. So the union executive. So here the union executive consists of three important agencies or persons or positions. Number one, president along with the vice president. So they are at the top. Then council of ministers, prime ministers and his minister, his cabinet ministers. And then attorney general. So the president is president at the union constitutes as the head of the country, in whose name and the executive powers are vested. Anna. But you know about the presidents that the president is the head of the country in whose name the executive powers are vested, but president himself do not exercise them. So they constitute the nominal executive. So the prime minister and his councils of ministers at the union level exercise all the powers vested in the nominal executive. So they constitute the real executive. So we will discuss separately all these positions: president, vice president, prime minister, and council of ministers. Then there is here, as per our constitution, the president is the executive head of the state. The Indian Constitution under Article 53 vests the executive power of the union of in the president and shall exercise by them either directly or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with the Constitution. So he is the president is also the supreme commander of armed forces. So he is the first citizen of India. Okay, and occupies the first position under the warrant of precedence. So all the executive actions are taken in his name only. And whenever, as you know, in every 10 years, I don't know what is happening. Usually census is conducted every 10 years, and 91, 2001, 2011, then it was expected in the year 2021. But because of Corona, it has been delayed now. And whenever the census starts, it starts from the president. First name in this counting starts from the president, is the first citizen. He is the supreme commander of the armed forces. And in all the executive presidents, in this list, his name comes first. So then comes, he exercises powers with the help of the Council of Ministers. So there was, so as per our constitution, the advice of the Council of Ministers is obligatory on the president. So he has to work only on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Then comes Vice President, who is ex officio chairman of Raj Sabha, means the Council of State, right? So as he acts as the president in the case of death of the existing president, resignation, or his removal from the office. So just for the time being, temporary arrangement, Vice President can take charge of the president, act as a president. So the Vice President may also discharge his duties of the president during his absence, illness, or any other cause. Right? Suppose president is ill, president is out of country, then the regular day by day routine work can be taken over by the Vice President. So you must remember that he is the ex officio chairman of the Raj Sabha. This is the big responsibility given to the Vice President. Then we'll discuss Prime Minister, we'll discuss Council of Ministers separately. So these all constitute the Union Cabinet. Okay. So now I can see there are 68 students. So once again, let me check your attendance. Download attendance list. Here it is, downloading.